Funding for this program is made possible by Burke Nursery and Garden Center in Burke, Virginia. You'll find trees and shrubs, perennials and annuals, water garden supplies, houseplants, and bird and gardening supplies. Burke Nursery also provides landscape, plant diagnostic, and installation services, as well as the October month-long Pumpkin Playground Festival featuring hay rides and much more. For more information, you can check out their website or call 703-323-1188. Welcome to Gardening with Burke Nursery, the show where we help you grow your garden and increase the curb appeal of your yard. I'm your host, Misty Kuceris, the horticulturalist at Burke Nursery and Garden Center. You know, houseplants are wonderful. They let you bring nature into your home. They help purify the air and remove toxins such as benzene, TCP, and even formaldehyde. And various research studies have shown that having houseplants around you increases your healing and decreases your stress. So knowing this, what's not to like about having houseplants? Yet, one of the biggest questions I get about houseplants is, are they safe for my pet? So pet lovers, this show is for you. Join me today and learn about some common pet-friendly houseplants. Years ago, when I was involved with or started out with horticulture, there really were not that many houseplants available to the common person, you and me, in the stores. And so today, I want to focus on those that were common, and I'll also be doing another episode on houseplants for pets, pet-friendly houseplants, and those will be called the lesser-known houseplants. And one of the best websites to go and check out is the ASPCA website. What's great about that website, which is aspca.org, is that they have a search function in that website. And when you go to the search function, you just type in the name of the plant that you're interested in. So, for example, this is a page that I printed out. And this page, as you can see, I printed out African violet, and it came up with one picture of one of the many colors African violets come in, and it has the common name and the scientific name, which I think is so neat. That scientific name, Saintpaulia, and I'll let you know how that came into being. And then the most important portion of this, it talks about the toxicity, and the African violet is non-toxic to both dogs and cats, as well as horses too. So ASPCA looks out for your horses as well as your dogs and cats. Now here is your African violet. Like I said, it's a very common, almost Victorian houseplants. For a lot of people, the African violet has fallen a little out of favor because it's so common, but not really. It comes in a number of colors. This is white with a little pink in it. It comes in purple. It comes in dark pink, almost fuchsia. It comes in with flowers that are ruffled or with flowers that are straight or narrow. It comes in lavender. There are just so many different colors. And there are different flower types. So I don't know if you can see this, but on this one, this is known as a double flower type because it has one stem that comes from the base of the plant and then two flowers on that one stem. And then others are just single stemmed where you have the stem and then the flower coming up. Now, for some people, African violets could be a little tricky because they need a sunny location. They love being in the windowsill. They love the warmth. They are originally from Africa, which is their name, African violets. And they actually were brought to the not to the United States, but to Europe from someone by the name of Saintpaulia, who, let's see if I can get his actual name. He was a German baron, and Walter von Saintpaulia. And he took and found, and he didn't find, but he collected the first African violet from Tanzania, which of course is in Africa. Now, if you want to grow an African violet, here's a couple things that are important to remember besides the fact that it likes to have full sun. For best flowering, African violets really like to be what we call root bound. That means the roots in this plant like to touch the pot. Other people might call it pot bound. If you put an African violet in a pot that's too large, what will happen is it won't flower as well. The other thing about African violets is that they love moisture. And I have here what is known as a self-watering pot. And it comes in various different sizes. And it may not look self-watering when you take a look at this, but what you'll see is that it has two parts to it. So the first part is the actual pot, which is ceramic, and then the base is where you put the water in. And I recommend actually putting the water in and soaking this for a few hours. So basically, what I would do is I would just pour the water in the main part of the pot. About halfway should do it. Put this actual pot in the base. Leave it there for a few hours so that that water starts saturating through this pot. And then, because African violets need porous soil, please purchase African violet potting mix. And then all you have to do is plant it, and you're all set. You have an incredible African violet. Another plant that loves to be pot bound. I think a lot of you know this plant, and this little baby here. This is known as the spider plant. And the reason it's called the spider plant, you can't really see it here, but the reason that it's called the spider plant is right here. This is the outgrowth of the spider plant. These are called little plantlets. And eventually, these little plantlets start developing roots. And after they've developed the roots will just come right down off these. Then you can do one of two things to get yourself more spider plants. You can either leave this on the mother and then just put it into the ground, and or rather you can put it into the soil, perhaps a pot. Or you can cut this and then put it in water and let it root better and then put it in its own little pot. What's great, I mean, all these plants are wonderful when it comes to preventing toxins, but a lot of research has shown that having the spider plant definitely helps remove formaldehyde, benzene, it helps remove carbon monoxide, and xylene. And this is the more common type. This is what we call variegated. So that means that the leaves are green, and you have also the white. And the less common is where the leaves are all green, and you don't have the variegation. The spider plant does like to have medium to bright light. It does not like to be in a window, but it does like having that light. One of the things that's great about spider plants is it's a wonderful plant to begin with if you've never grown houseplants. While you need to water it and keep the soil moist, it actually can handle it if you forget to water it sometimes, or you don't want to forget too long because it'll let you know, but it's pretty adaptable. Also, these little platelets, or what I call little spiders, like to extend out about 12 feet, and not feet, I'm sorry, not feet, 12 inches. Feet would be incredible, wouldn't it? But 12 inches, they like to extend 12 inches. So what happens, this is why they make such wonderful hanging baskets, is that they just droop down, and when you have a lot of these little teeny spiders, as I prefer to call them, plantlets as they are technically called, the whole pot just looks gorgeous. Now what I'd like to talk about is a plant that eventually can get 5 to 8 feet tall. This plant is your parlor plant. Now, there's a lot of different palms. The Parlor Palm or parlor plant. This is also known as the Nantha Bella Palm. So there's two names. And usually the actual Parlor Palm will be, you'll find that usually sold smaller, and then the larger one, which technically is exactly the same plant, the Nantha, is usually sold already at heights of 5 feet to 6 feet, and they can spread 5 feet to 6 feet. Now this little one, this one isn't going to grow quite that fast. It'll only be growing 3 or 4 inches. So on this little dwarf, it'll be years before you get it into the right size. These are also known as Victorian palms. And part of why they were called parlor palms is because during the Victorian era, these palms were put in their parlors. They were used as what I call interior landscaping, interior design. They were very, very important. And of course, why not? They improve the air quality, they help relax people. Again, so wonderful to have plants in your house. Now, your palms are your low light plants. They like medium light is their preference, but they will also do low light. So if you don't have a lot of light in your location, then these are wonderful. And these are actually native to rainforests in Mexico and Guatemala. And yet, even though these come from a rainforest, these don't need a lot of humidity. So if you have a house that's on the dry side, excellent. And if you ever need to prune these, what you would have to do is you don't prune the leaf and leave a stump, but you actually have to prune the entire stem all the way down to the soil. These are just wonderful. Now, there are several other palms that are also pet friendly. Your bamboo palm, and its fronds are larger, they're thicker. Your lady palm, that's another one. Your areca palm, that's another one. And they just, so there's a whole slew, so to speak. Now, one plant that has, there's a couple plants that have the name palm in them that are not actually palms. One is my favorite, which is pet friendly, and I'll be talking about that in my less known pet friendly plants. And that one is actually the ponytail palm. So be sure to watch that show to find out what it really is instead of a palm, a little cliffhanger. The other one is the sago palm. Please, if you have pets, especially pets that like to eat the fronds or eat the spiders, which actually cats love this, they think the spider plant is a toy, especially if it's in a location that they can reach it. So your cat won't have a problem with the spider plant, but the spider plant may have a problem with your cat. And the same for the palms. Cats tend to just like to play with these. But the sago palm is one, it looks like a pineapple, and then it has what looks like fronds. And that is actually a plant that is not in the palm family, just named because of how it looks. The sago palm is extremely poisonous, and it's in what we call the cyclid family, or cycid family, rather. And that means those are plants that actually have cones. So what looks like a pineapple in that sago palm is actually a cone for that plant. And please, that plant is not only extremely poisonous to cats, dogs, and horses, but it can also be poisonous to people and children if you're not careful with that particular plant. Gorgeous looking plant, but not one I recommend. So the next one that I'd like to talk about is the bird's nest fern. I put this in my common houseplants show today, not necessarily because this particular fern is common. This one is not quite as common as your other typical ferns, like your maidenhair fern or your Boston fern or your moonlight. Well, some people don't know the moonlight fern, and I did not bring a picture of that. That also doesn't have the normal fern leaves. But a lot of people know the maidenhair. A lot of people know the Boston ferns. Those ferns, like your bird's nest fern, they are pet friendly. The one fern that is not pet friendly is the asparagus fern. And that's fern that, actually, to me, the asparagus fern can be a very, very messy fern as well. And it just has very, very loose fronds on it, very loose leaves, and those leaves can fall all over the place. So I do recommend that if you really want to keep your pets safe, avoid having the asparagus fern in your home. Now, the bird's nest fern, this is the neat thing. So most ferns grow from the outside, and the leaves come from the outside. But the bird's nest fern actually grows from the inside. I'm going to move this little spider plant back here. And I'm going to show you, if you look inside this bird's nest fern, you'll see little leaves that are starting to unfold. And these little leaves will eventually, here's a very tiny leaf, then another leaf, and then a little bit of a larger leaf. And they're just growing and they're unrolling. And like every other fern, the actual seeds are in the back. I picked one fern that doesn't have that, so I can't show you. But that's why this is called a bird's nest fern. And the bird's nest fern, like all your ferns, need a lot of humidity. Because think of it, they're woodland plants. They do love shade, so if you have a shade house, they like low light. Because they need a lot of humidity, I can't say that they would be the best when it comes to having them in an office space, where something like your Parlor Palm, which I talked about earlier, that would do well in an office. But the bird's nest fern, because it needs humidity. However, there is a way to help it with all that humidity. And that is what we call a humidity tray. Get a little of that soil out of here. You can either purchase a tray that has ridges. Now, this one is actually what I like to call a pot dish. Or you can go and get your pot dish like this and purchase a pot dish. And then you can purchase stone. And the stone that you can purchase, this is called river rock. It's small stone. You can also purchase marble chips, again, small stone. And I would recommend to purchase the stone as opposed to going outside. If you decide to get stone from outside, then you need to make sure that stone is sanitized, because if it's not sanitized, then you could have some problems with bringing in either bringing in a fungal infection or bringing in some other kind of problem. So what you would do then is put your stones very carefully and very slowly. And the reason I say slowly is that no matter how well sanitized these stones are, they're still dust. And so you don't want to get all that dust in your eyes. And you just fill this up. And you fill it up with stone that is about halfway up here. So it's not all the way up to the side, but about halfway to the side. And then what you do is you take your water, put the water in this tray, and here's where you need to be a little cautious. The water in the tray, well, if I tip it over, then the problem is the water all comes to the side. But the water does not fully cover the rocks. The rocks are moist because I just poured the water in there, but eventually the very, very tops of these rocks will dry. And the reason that this is important is that you don't want any of your houseplants sitting in the actual water, but you would just put them on the tray like this. And then what happens is, as that water is evaporating, you're now getting moisture. And your plant will love it. And then another way that sometimes you can create some humidity for your plant, and I think I've said this on some previous shows of mine, that my mother, whenever she would break a wine glass, and she just had the stem and you couldn't use the wine glass, she would take that and actually put it into the plant and then pour water into the glass portion of the plant, and that also helped with humidity. And then the other is you can buy a spray bottle and mist over the plants, but you don't want to mist on the leaves. And then, of course, the final thing that you can do is, if you have plants that need a lot of humidity, what you can do is you could take those plants and you can use them to decorate your bathroom. Because every time you take that shower, you have a lot of humidity coming in. And then, speaking of humidity, the final pet-friendly plant that I'd like to talk about is the Photonia. Let's just move this aside here. And here is your Photonia. There's two types of Photonias. There's one that is green, this one, green with the white little veins. And this one is called the nerve plant. And people have asked me, why nerve plant? And I would say, well, it reminds me of the neural pathways if I were looking into a brain. And I would see these little ridges in a brain and neural pathways telling me which way to send the messages. And the Photonia is not a plant that gets very, very tall. As a matter of fact, this can grow about 2-3 feet wide, but this is about the height. So this is a great plant If you want something to place at the base of another plant, it looks beautiful there. And then the other Photonia, again, pet-friendly, is the Photonia that is red or pink, and it has red and pink veins. And so that one, called Devil's Vein. So I guess somebody would imagine going into the brain cell of an individual and seeing that individual dealing with devil-make thoughts or something, and then again it has the little veins here. And the Photonia is another plant that I would put on my little humidity tray if I wanted, and it would be very, very happy. So these houseplants that I showed you today are just a sample of the plants that you can have in a pet-safe environment. And even if you don't have any pets, these plants can still bring joy into your life and nature into your home. I'm your host, Misty Kuceris, and I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me here at Gardening with Burke Nursery. I'm looking forward to helping you grow your garden.
Funding for this program is made possible by Burke Nursery and Garden Center in Burke, Virginia. You'll find trees and shrubs, perennials and annuals, water garden supplies, houseplants, and bird and gardening supplies. Burke Nursery also provides landscape, plant diagnostic, and installation services, as well as the October month-long Pumpkin Playground Festival featuring hayrides and much more. For more information, you can check out their website or call 703-323-1188.